Gun store employees, what's your this person should never be allowed to own a gun story? I worked in a courthouse where we prosecuted a few straw purchases. In one case, a middle-aged woman with no knowledge of guns bought 9 pistols. She claimed she wanted one for every room in the house. The gun store owner, former sheriff, called police while the salesman talked to her, and they worked out a sting operation. Sure enough, the woman was an actual doctor who fell in love with a gangland bad boy and got 5 years for attempting a straw purchase. Dated a guy who worked at a gun store while he was in college. He didn't get out until 7, so I'd head over after work with a coffee to shoot the shit with him, especially since the store was pretty empty between 6 and 7. One day a guy came in and asked what's the best gun for hunting people. I think he was trying to be funny, but he got escorted out of there pretty quick. Apparently he came back the next morning, and they had him fill out a form where he checked off that yes, he had felony convictions. No firearm for him. There were a surprisingly large number of people who came in high or drunk wanting to buy a gun. There was one guy who grabbed a shotgun off the rack and proceeded to fake shoot me, complete with POW sounds. I got pushed down, and he got tackled. He was stinking drunk and apparently wanted a rifle to shoot his girlfriend, not kill her, just wound her, like that somehow made it better. The funniest was the guy who loaded his pistol backwards, bullets facing the wrong way, and then wondered why it wouldn't fire. They fixed it for him, but there were heavy suggestions that he should give up target shooting if he can't load the gun correctly. Conversation right off the bat went like this, literally. His first words were, "I'd like to buy your deadliest gun please." After a while, I handed him a pistol to see. Immediately waved it at me. I said, "Careful there, Annie Oakley." He said I don't have to be careful. I got a gun. I then said, "Well, you'll probably want the accessory kit," and proceeded to show off all the bells and whistles. He kind of blew me off for the most part and rushed to say, "Just give me my gun." Me, "Sorry, the law requires a 5-day waiting period. We've got to run a background check." Him, 5 days? But I'm mad now. I took the gun away, obviously. Him, visibly angry that I did this. "I'd kill you if I had my gun." Me, "Yeah, well, you don't." I had a woman come in and say she needed something cheap that she wouldn't miss if the police confiscated it. It freaked me out, so I asked her to leave. Then she cussed me out and told me it's her right to own a firearm. I agreed with her that she has a right to own a firearm, but I also told her it's my right not to sell to her and that she needs to leave before one of the Leos who work the counter to as a second job escort her out. Weird lady. I don't work in a gun store, but I have a relative who really shouldn't own a gun. He wanted to be a professional hunter, and in my country you have to go to a psychologist who can check if you're mentally healthy enough to get your hunter license and your gun. He's a pretty messed up guy, which the psychologist wrote down in his papers, and naturally he didn't get the license. But it turned out the rules here are that you only need a mental health check if you want a job that requires a gun. If you just want a gun for whatever reason, you only have to be physically healthy. No one cares about your mental problems. So my relative literally have an official paper about not being in the mental state to have a gun, but he has a gun. Go figure. The story is actually about me, unfortunately. I was absolutely terrified of guns. I decided one year that I wanted to face my fears, which is absolutely the most stupid BS anybody is ever going to sell you. If you're scared of something, it's okay. I had no idea what to do and how to go about practicing with a gun or handling a gun. I went to a gun store and started asking a ton of questions. The guy pulled out a Glock for me to hold on to, but my hands were shaking so badly I nearly broke the glass counter it was set on. A police officer came, which now, thinking back on it, they probably called him because I was so freaking skeezy. He was actually very nice and talked to me about things and referred me to a shooting range where I could practice and just pay some money to learn about them and hold one. I have gone to the shooting range 2 or 3 times, and I'm generally more comfortable with them, but thinking back on that experience, everybody there must have been scared to death of me. I posted this a few years ago. I used to work at a recently bankrupt big box sporting goods store for over 15 years. Best denial of sale. a grandfather, father, and son, senior, junior, III, all came in separately to try to use the same permit to buy guns. The permits are issued by the police department after a background check for one individual only. On the permit they left out the senior junior II designation, misspelled their surname, and made up a DOB. If your it has SR/JR/II on it, then the gun permit has to have that too. Also, if you can't spell your own name or remember your birthday, then that is not a good sign. Any one of these things are automatic rejections. Upon denial of the sale, each of them physically threatened me, promised that I was on a list now, and that I should watch my back because of all the cops that they know. Later in the week we got a call from the police. It turned out that whichever one of them got the permit deliberately put the wrong information to get by the background check. I'm not sure how this got past the police. None of them were able to pass the background check. If I remember correctly, Junior had an active warrant and we were to call the police if any of them ever came back in the store. Surprise. The other two of you have warrants now. Dumbest denial of sale. A couple came in that had just completed a handgun safety course. They both proudly showed me their paperwork and started looking at guns. They were waiting for a friend who would help them choose what to get, and he was going to take them out shooting the next day. While they waited, they proceeded to lecture another customer and I on various guns that they were looking at. About 75% of the information was wrong. The one wrong thing I remember is that they believed apparently for Glocks the model number indicates the caliber. This is sort of true, but they believed something like a Glock 17 fires a 17 caliber round which is 17mm long. Thus a Glock 21 fires a 21 caliber round that is 21mm long, and so on. Then the guy has his wife point a pump shotgun at his face so he can look down the barrel and try to pull the trigger. The idiot wanted to see the action of the gun to make sure it worked. Neither of them checked to see if the gun was empty. They simply assumed that it was. They got mad when I took the gun away from them, told them I would not sell them a gun and to get the hell out. Up to this point the other customer was just amused by the couple. Once they looked down the barrel and pulled the trigger, the other customer that was there started bitching them out about being morons. They could not comprehend how dangerous/stupid what they did was, and countered with that gun was clearly broken because it did not go click. The gun was not cocked and the action was open. Worst denial of sale. A friend had just turned 21 and was flying into town for a long holiday weekend. During his stay he was looking to pick up about 4 to 5 guns while he was in town. So I put aside some guns for him to look because he was supposed to stop by on Friday night after he arrived. Once he arrived on Friday, he and a bunch of our friends decided to go get dinner and some drinks instead of coming by to look at the guns. So he gave me a call to let me know that he would be coming by on Saturday instead. Not a problem. I was opening on Saturday anyway and ended up joining them for drinks later that evening. On Saturday afternoon he finally rolls into the store looking very hungover. He looks over what I had put aside for him and eventually decides on 4 different guns. I start him on the paperwork and notice an issue with his permit. The police department had screwed up the permit. They put the issue date and expiration date as exactly the same. The permit had expired the exact same day it was issued and had only been good for that day. He could not get any guns and would have to fly back to his hometown to get the permit reissued, but the police department was closed for the holiday weekend. He picked up his permit on Friday before going to the airport. Long-time employee here. A customer dropped off a pistol for repair. When he picked it up he took it to his truck with no issues and drove off. 5 minutes later there's an ambulance in our parking lot. The guy had popped in a loaded magazine after leaving and accidentally shot himself in the leg while driving down the street. He managed to drive back to our parking lot and call 911. An EMT walked into our shop, told us what happened and asked if we'd hold the gun until the customer could come back and get it, which he did a few months later using a cane. A lady came in and proceeded to walk around the store talking and laughing to herself. When she got close enough I could hear what seemed like a one-sided conversation, but with clear pauses, like she's listening to the response. We're all giving each other the look behind the counter. No sale, no way. She walks out the door without saying anything to us and goes to her car. She opens up the back door on the driver's side, like she's opening the door for someone. She waits for her imaginary friend to get in, then got in herself and drove away. I never saw her again. I worked in the firearms section of a sporting goods store. Had a lady come in acting strange and asked to look at some shotguns. I hand her one and she tells me, "Yep, this is just like the gun I used to shoot my sister's ex-boyfriend in the dick at point blank range when he tried to touch me inappropriately." We also had another person who came in and claimed to be a law enforcement officer. Pretty sure this person was a security guard, but I digress. The person brought this gun in with them and claimed that they bought it from our store and that the gun kept on jamming. They also accused us of not checking our guns to make sure they work before we sell them. We had to explain that no store selling firearms is going to test new guns to make sure they work and then sell them as new guns, and suggested that we could ship the firearm back to the manufacturer for repair. Turns out, the person bought it from a person who had bought it from the store, but not our particular location. This person ended up leaving in a huff and shouting stuff like I'm going to go to a store that only sells guns that they verify actually work. I worked in the store, but not the gun counter. My boyfriend at the time also worked there, and he told me a few stories when we would get off work. There were a few times that two people would come in. One or both would want to buy a gun, but one got turned down due to a failed background check. So the other guy would try to buy the gun under his name for his buddy. Both were declined a sale. Had a child run behind the gun counter and try to pull a rifle off the shelf. The gun counter guys were allowed to decline a sale for any reason. Failed background check? No sale. Obviously not sober? No sale. Being a dick? No sale. My boyfriend at the time was super into animals, and a guy came up asking for a gun to shoot like his neighbor's dog or something. He didn't get sold a gun, and they called every other store in town, gave the guy's info, and he was blacklisted from all other stores in the area. Another guy got blacklisted from every gun store in town because he had violent felonies come up on his background check, and he was somehow surprised by this. Those are the only ones I can remember right now, lol. Not a gun store employee, but once me and a bunch of my friends and I got together to shoot a little skeet. Some of the people there hadn't shot a gun before, so we pair up to make sure everyone has someone knowledgeable with them. This one guy though just didn't understand anything we said. It was all in one ear out the other. First, when told to keep the gun pointed down range, he holds it out in front of him, then turns around to ask a question, sweeping the whole lot of us. His partner forcibly pushes the barrel up before kindly telling him what he did wrong. Secondly, as he's nodding and pointing the shotgun down range again, he takes aim and pulls the stock out of his armpit and rests it on top of his shoulder. His partner corrects him several times, but after the third or fourth time of the stock ending on top of his shoulder, he gets the shotgun taken away. Unfortunately, the tale doesn't end here. I watch as his partner shows him how to hold the stock firmly in his armpit and how to stand and aim. Nodding like he understands, he's given the shotgun back, only to sweep the crowd of us once more. His face is all confused as we are all ducking and skipping out of the way as he turns around pointing the loaded shotgun at us. I apologized to the guy hosting the skeet shoot and got out of there. This guy wasn't getting it, and I didn't want to be around any longer. Nothing happened after I left, luckily, but he shouldn't ever hold a firearm again. Guns are rare as hen's teeth here, but I was a theatrical armorer for a bit, so I not only had one, I had 26 of varying types and capabilities, all for use in TV and theater. Some were deactivated or barrel blocked, and we also had some that were just started pistols, although not many, but most were actually fully capable, although we didn't keep live rounds, just blanks. The main bit of the job, other than paperwork detailing who use them, was inductions and instruction for actors who were to use them. Some of the guns expelled out of event in the top. We used to do a full briefing, including the usual "a gun is loaded until you've cleared it," and not pointing the guns at anyone, except during the actual choreographed performance, that sort of stuff. I briefed on how to hold the guns too, and choreographed a performance with a guy who had to shoot another character with a handgun that actually expelled out of the top. He held it with both hands in the rehearsal, and then in the performance he put one hand over it, and the degloved one of his fingers. He definitely shouldn't have a gun, but almost no one can get one here anyway. He had surgery to repair his finger, and could move it again properly, after about a year. I had a friend once whose sister was a borderline psychopath. Literally. It was the first and only time I visited his house and we were talking about future plans, when she out of the blue, cut in saying I'm going to be a cop. I just smiled and said cool, which apparently wasn't the words I should have used. About 30 minutes later, I was sitting in his room when his sister charges in to fight me. I'm 5'4", and back then was ducking tiny and weak. She was built like a brick shit house. My friend managed to wrestle her out of his room and lock the door, only to have an axe suddenly being hacked into it 10 minutes later. That's right. This loony of a woman decided to reenact the ducking shinning scene on us. I called the cops, freaking out, and she yelled at me that it was just a joke. No one was laughing, and I learned a week later that this wasn't the first time or even the 5th time she had done this. Thank God, having a record will keep you from becoming an officer. For anyone coming here who isn't familiar with guns, here are the 4 rules of safe gun handling. Treat every gun as if it were loaded. Don't point the gun at anything you're not willing to destroy, including yourself. Always be sure of your target and what's behind it. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're on target and ready to fire.